What is going on, everybody? Matt is back. It is week 13. I cannot believe that we are on to week 13 already.
Season's almost over, man.
Oh my gosh, we're near the fantasy football playoffs for our season-long and best ball bros. We're nearing the end of the regular season and into the actual NFL playoffs. It's crazy to think that we're almost here, but I guess, it is almost, we're closing in on Christmas. So I guess I should not be that surprised, but man, it feels like it has really flown by. I remember hopping on here week one and everything that we talked about in week one here on the show. And here, yeah, exactly. Don't get too happy here with the compliments.
Dude,
2 weeks
all
ago,
I
you
know
couldn't
is
fix a tire, and last week you weren't here.
Yeah, all I know is we're at a point now, based on where we were at in week one. We're now at a place where the Seahawks are going to the Rams as 8-point favorites.
Yeah, it's crazy. We say this every year, and like every show I've done for the last 3 weeks, we say all these kinds of cliche things like, oh my gosh, the injuries this year, or oh my gosh, we didn't see this thing coming. I do feel like this year, because now we're kind of removed from the pandemic aspect, right? It was like those couple years where it was kind of largely pandemic related issues and stress and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Weird. It was just weird. This is like, man, all these young players going down. The Super Bowl champions are basically shutting it down and tanking, even though they don't even have their draft pick.
That is very weird.
The Seahawks are really good, and no one on the planet thought that was going to happen. So I think
Geno Smith is way better than Russell Wilson.
That's what I was exactly about to say.
Yeah, Geno and Russ flipped bodies and talents or whatever.
Exactly.
So, but we're to this point in the season where I think a lot of people would say, well, now we know, right? Now we know everything, but I actually think we start to get into like almost a second wave of chaos at this point in the season, right? We're having the Rams shut it down. Teams are having injuries. One I've been talking about on some other shows this week that we're not going to get to here, but like Tristan Wirfs going down for the Bucks is like something that people, these things pile up, man. And you get to Christian Darrisaw, right? You're getting all these different guys who are actually impactful to teams, games, totals, DFS. But it's like, we think we know all these teams by now, by week 13, but it's kind of this, like I said, this second wave almost of chaos.
Well, the Bucks are 3.5-point favorites at home. 3.5. Saints win, lose by 3 and still cover. You
would have thought a game or two that we'll talk about today, particularly maybe the last two that we're trying to decide between. We never would have thought that those would be in play as other than a narrative for one of them, I guess, as a game for us to talk about as a GPP game stack over the Bucks Saints. But we're like no one even said like, wait, do we need to talk about Bucks Saints? That's just like, throw that game in the garbage.
That game's on Monday Night Football, guys.
Oh, see, look at this. I'm not prepared as the host, but anyway, on to the real meat and potatoes, the fun. Let's start with the game of the week, right? I don't think we can start this show with any other game besides Chiefs Bengals. There's a lot of fun games this week, I think, and we're going to talk about a bunch of them.
I'm so happy to be on the show. That's why I want to be on the show this week. I was like, I'm going to be on the Stackfest this week. This is a good week for be on the Stackfest.
Last week, Dario and I were struggling to figure out different. We figured it out as we talked through it, but we didn't come into the show with like, okay, we got to talk about these games this week, particularly with Chiefs and Bengals. This is very clearly, the game of the week for real football, but probably also for DFS. You have Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs that are an unstoppable force, and Joe Burrow has been pretty good even without Jamar Chase, and now all reports today are that Jamar Chase is good to go for Sunday. So we have a theoretically full strength Bengals with not quite a full strength Chiefs, but maybe some guys stepping into some new roles with some other guys banged up that kind of still make them fairly full strength. Dario, what's your first takeaway with this game, obviously from a DFS slant?
I looked at Patrick Mahomes' projected ownership on DraftKings, and I don't know why it's only 5%. That's my first takeaway is you would have thought that Patrick Mahomes in a 52.5 point game total would be top 3 in quarterback ownership easily. So the fact he's not up there, obviously you're going to have to pay up for Mahomes, but we've seen it with Josh Allen weeks where everyone's like, this is the week you pay up for Josh Allen. It's without question. And I think that's because the Bengals defense has been pretty good. We probably all have that second half inability to move the ball on the Bengals in the AFC Championship game kind of present in our minds. But I think that it's still Patrick Mahomes, and Andy Reid's probably been scheming up for the Bengals defense the entire offseason. And I just think that if you can play him at low ownership, that just seems like too easy.
It's a great call, Matt? Man. I mean, this is a great game. I know that some of these other games have high totals as well, right? Chargers, Raiders, we'll talk about that. That's over 50. And of course, Lions, Jaguars over 50. But I mean, this is the game, right? This is the game, right? It's partially a function of the defenses being so easy to score on is why we're so interested in, Jaguars, Lions, and, the pace of play is fast and the defenses are soft. This is just about the quarterbacks. This is like Burrow, Mahomes. You don't have to worry about the defenses. You don't have to worry about anything. You just know Burrow and Mahomes are going to get it done. So if you want to stack them up and skew your entire portfolio toward Mahomes Burrow stacks, please do. Permission granted.
So what about let's talk on the Chiefs side first, because it's the Bengals are not super straightforward, but more so I think than the Chiefs. If I click over to the flex, let me actually click off of the Bengals just for this exercise. Obviously, we have Travis Kelce. Not a ton that we have to say about Travis Kelce and possibly the shootout of the week at a tight end position that every day gets worse in fantasy. Even a guy that plays for the Bills, Dawson Knox, can't do anything. David Njoku is now out for the Browns. The position is a mess, and you have Travis Kelce here. But similar to the Patrick Mahomes thing, Dario is like, this is my priority stack of Mahomes is with Kelce, but we're going to run out of salary really fast if we're GMing Mahomes, Kelce teams, and then any Bengals, right? If you want Chase or you want Higgins or whatever, you really start to run out of salary. But is that still kind of where you really want to start is like Mahomes, Kelce?
I think, yeah, you have to. Kelce has been just unstoppable this year. We've seen 3-touchdown game, a 4-touchdown game. Like, the last thing you want to do is stack Mahomes, and then the entire offensive production goes through Kelce, and you're just like toast because you didn't stack him with Kelce like everyone else did.
Yeah, like the old 40-point game from the tight end that we got 2 weeks ago against the Chargers. But Matt, how are you kind of deciphering through then non-Kelce Chiefs? Right, I don't know if we have an injury
Valdez
report.
Scantling down to 4.1K. Right. No.
Wash, rinse, repeat for MVS. Yes, you don't have to sign me up. You don't have to. You don't have to
sign you up.
Yes.
What about Sky Moore, guys?
I definitely
feel like
Sky Moore.
The problem with Marquez Valdez Scantling, 3 consecutive weeks. Look at the snap share: 80%, 70%, 60%.
And if you look,
it's going down, and you look at the snap shares for Sky Moore, Dario.
25%, 37%, 45%. He's directly eating his lunch.
See, here's one thing I will say. I still like both of them in tournaments. Being out there for 60% of pick one of them. They're out there for 50 to 60% at these prices. That's how you afford Mahomes. That's how you afford Mahomes, Kelce, whatever. Pick Sky. I would play not both of them in the same lineup, but like if Sky just stays at that 30% or whatever, right? This whole like growth isn't necessary. It's being linear right now. Growth and regression are being linear right now, but between these two guys just slowly going up this hill. But that's like not like, look at James Cook last night. It's generally like not how it works, right? Usually it's like a switch flips on. And so that could be the thing for Sky Moore. It's like, okay, we've seen enough now. If he would stop fumbling, we would have already seen, the 70% of snaps or whatever. But I think you could almost make a case, we're just spitballing here, like Mahomes making your Mahomes stacks have one of on DraftKings, have one of Sky or MVS in them, because I do kind of feel like it's not that one of them has to get there. But man, the opportunity at the price, whichever one that it is, if MVS fends him off and still gets his 70% of snaps, or Sky takes over, are just could be keys to this slate in tournaments.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Sky Moore, that's how you afford that stack, is you double stack with Mahomes with Sky Moore at only 3.1K. If I told you that, a second round pick runs a 4.4, who's a dominant college player, is coming off 2 consecutive 6-target games where his snap share has been going up 10% every week, and he's still 3.1K, he'd be the punt play wide receiver that everyone's playing this week.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, I think maybe the field will be catching on to this, but right now the projected ownership is basically nothing for Sky Moore, which is.
I think everyone's going to catch on. People love the new shiny new toy, especially on the Chiefs and especially in this game. But if it's reasonable ownership, right? As long as it doesn't get out of hand, I think it's fine.
I mean, we saw with Garrett Wilson last week, right? Everyone was like, "Oh, he's 4.3K or something like that."
Super cheap. Yep.
And crazy chalky, and it's like he got there.
And a lot of the times you'll see those guys. Not a lot of the times. Sometimes you will see those guys. It doesn't run away from us because everybody says it, right? There's how many of these DFS shows exist, right? You guys have been around. Like everybody's like, well, can't play the chalk X player, right? And Garrett Wilson was also a funky one. Maybe Sky's a little different, where it's like, am I playing a one-off Jets wide receiver, as chalk in tournaments? Maybe Sky Moore is a little bit different than that, or a player from this game. But what about what about Juju? Didn't get back to the full snaps. Is there anything translating like the Sky Moore thing? Did he steal some of that from Juju as well? And then we got to talk about Pacheco. He projects okay here, and he really took over that early down role. But I kind of want to hear your guys' thoughts on these other Juju, Pacheco, and is there anybody else that's kind of seeing the field or getting sprinkled in?
Tony's not practicing today, is he not? Is he or?
That's
he
what I was
didn't
trying
practice Wednesday. Didn't practice
Wednesday or Thursday. Yeah.
So we're assuming no Kadarius Toney.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's big, right? That's big. I think that's why the projected ownership right now, not knowing where Toney is low on Sky Moore. I think once Kadarius Toney's ruled out, Sky Moore is going to pop.
Yeah, that seems pretty logical. I think more importantly on their injury report is a hamstring strain for Jerick McKinnon. He also hasn't practiced Wednesday or Thursday. And if Pacheco can get even half of his targets,
don't do this to me,
then he's like completely nuclear.
This is amazing. Yeah, this is why the Burrow stacks are great too, because you have this Pacheco run back. I'm more excited about the Pacheco run back than I am the Mixon run back for salary reasons.
Well, so can we talk this one through? So let's make the assumption because if McKinnon plays, it's a very different situation. McKinnon's going to get the McKinnon role. The only thing that's been a stable role for the Chiefs all year has been that McKinnon role. If there is no Jerick McKinnon, Rojo will be active again. Are they calling up Melvin Gordon on a short week? How do you perceive that this backfield's going to work, right? Who's playing long down and distance? And all that. Is Pacheco going to get that, or what are you thinking, Dario?
I think they probably do call up Melvin Gordon. Like he, joined the practice squad earlier this week, and I don't think it's a coincidence that they knew McKinnon was injured and Gordon was having more of a pass game role with the Broncos, which has been kind of interesting to see. But I do think that they're starting to trust Isaiah Pacheco in the pass game. He had one target last week, but if you watch that play, they motioned him into the slot and he ran a real route and they threw him a pass 8 or 9 yards downfield. So I think that is pretty significant as opposed to that having one target been a dump off. And then, I mean, his pass blocking grade per PFF has been the worst in the backfield. So I think that's the biggest thing with trusting Pacheco. But I think that he probably would still see an uptick in snaps with more obvious run plays going to Rojo, kind of like last week where Rojo mixed in for a couple carries, and then maybe Melvin Gordon getting some really long down and distance third downs. Even if Pacheco can get half of that work that was McKinnon's and then the other half goes to Gordon, that's huge for Pacheco's upside.
What do you think?
Talking about a potential 70% snap share, because his snap share last week was 55%. 2 weeks ago against Jacksonville, it was 60%. So you shave off 60% or 30% of these snaps that we're getting to McKinnon every week, if not 50%, depending on the game script.
Mhm.
Suddenly you give him an extra 10% and give the rest to Gordon, and you sprinkle in some Ronald Jones. Yeah, we're talking about if you can get Pacheco at a 60% snap share in this game, because he also has breakaway run potential. It's not just all the red zone visits and the red zone carries, which he's going to get a bunch of. It's these breakaway runs that we have not seen yet that we are going to see. He only has 2 touchdowns on the year.
And we saw what can happen again each of these last 2 weeks. I try to pull up his game log. If you just get kind of the combination of these two things and tack on that 10-20% that you guys are talking about, right? Just think about it with rough basic 10% math, right? So he runs for 100 yards, doesn't have the Stone breakaway game or the Stone, breakaway 60-yard touchdown, but 5.1 yards per carry, 7.1 yards per carry in those 2 games ago and 3 games ago, right? So the efficiency on the ground, despite not all the snaps, was there. Then last week we lose the efficiency on the ground against the Rams, but we get the goal line touchdown. It's like, so when it comes together and we tack on those, 10-20%, whatever extra boost, you're talking 25 plus fantasy points.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's pretty good at 5.7K, I would say.
Yeah, less than Cordarrelle Patterson, less than Dameon Pierce, less than Samaje Perine on DraftKings still.
And the game environment is pristine. Like, it doesn't get any better than a 52.5 game total with 2 elite quarterbacks.
I mean, the only thing could be better is if it was, at Kansas City. That's it. If it was at Kansas City, it'd be a little bit better for Pacheco, but that's it. Still likely that the Chiefs have a lead. They're 2.5 point favorites.
And they're just the Chiefs. It's not like they're going to get the doors blown off them. There are no game scripts in Chiefs games, really, outside of super, super, super outliers where it's not close enough. Like there's a reason why Jerick McKinnon never gets to like 80% of snaps, even in, shootout games. It's because they never fall behind by that much. Like the early down backs are never scripted out in the Chiefs because they have freaking Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback. He keeps up with the opposition. That opposition is now who I want to get to for at least a few minutes with the Bengals.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? To think about Mahomes and Burrow. In terms of real football, they seem equivalent. In just NFL talent, and they both have Super Bowl appearances at this point. They're both just 2 of the elites, and yet that difference in salary makes all the difference, right? When you're setting your lineups up, like the Burrow lineups with Kelsey on the run back, or like Kelsey, these game stacks with Burrow, where you could play Pacheco and Kelsey. It's a lot easier to make your lineup look a lot better with Burrow on top as opposed to Mahomes. It's so the lineups are so much better. It doesn't even make logical sense given, okay, there's like whatever it is, a 1,300 difference.
Yep.
1,400 difference
14, yep.
On DraftKings. It feels like so much more when you look at you're like, oh my God, these lineups. Oh, I can't. I know it's silly, and the upside is more with Mahomes. He brings more to the table. It's just wow what you can do with these Burrow lineups.
Even then, Burrow, okay, the pure total absolute ceiling, Mahomes has him by a couple points or something like that. Yes. Sure. But Burrow does this in these games. He did it to the Chiefs last year.
450 yards, man. It's out there.
He has those 40-point games in his bag too. Maybe it's not quite to the consistency of Patrick Mahomes, but when they decide to put the game in Joe Burrow's hands and throw the ball to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, he's got as much upside as anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about between the two of these guys, Dario? And then you got to tell me what to do with Chase, Higgins, Boyd, Hurst, Mixon, because I have strong convictions on the Chiefs, and I think we all generally agree over there. The Bengals, I have no idea what to do with.
I mean, it's kind of gone under the radar how good Joe Burrow has been this year, which is hard to believe I'm saying that out loud because everyone loves Joe Burrow, but he's like currently the QB4 in fantasy in points per game. And we all were ranking him in like 7 to 10 range, right? It's like, oh, he's not going to keep up like being as efficient as he's been. Like he's kind of done that, and no one's really talking about it. He's got the second most touchdowns in the league behind Mahomes, passing at least. So I think that he's very much shown that he's here to stay as an elite quarterback without a doubt. And I think that you have to fire up Chase. Like you can, I read, there was like a Twitter thread yesterday where someone, like the beat reporter, kind of had like an extended explanation from Jamar Chase, kind of like what happened with his hip and how he like sort of partially injured it during the Saints game. And then the Falcons game, he like re-injured it right before halftime. And then he's just like kind of a crazy dude. And when he was like, oh yeah, when I get my adrenaline going, like I'll play through anything. And then the next day he was like, I could barely walk. And then now he's kind of gotten back to the point. He's like, yeah, I'm practicing full go. Like I don't feel a thing. I'm fine. So I think Jamar Chase, if he was playing through what he was playing through in the two games, the 230 burgers that he gave you before he like out of nowhere went on the IR, like you got to trust him in this game.
If it were a high ankle, I wouldn't play him. Right? Would not play him. Right? We talked about this with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, give him a couple weeks. And then sure enough, boom, he's back, right? This hip injury is unique. There aren't that many injuries like this every year. And a lot of these guys go on the IR for the rest of the year and they're out with these hip injuries. So this is a weird one where I'm not sure-footed at all about this injury. And I would not want to fade Chase and then get absolutely steamrolled by him. Like you can't let that happen. You're not in this game, not with the lineups you can build with Burrow. You just can't let it. You can't do it. Like my first instinct was, let's take it easy, right? Like we can always play Chase next week. But that's what my instinct's always like that with guys coming back from injury. Always. This is different, man. I don't know. And look at Burrow. I mean, Burrow had 9 rush attempts last week. He has 4 rushing touchdowns on the season. Yeah, I agree. The ceiling different. I don't understand his salary. I don't understand what the DraftKings salary algorithm was doing with him. 6.9. Play him. I mean, play him and play some Chase. I don't know if I don't know how aggressively process wise. Going all in on a guy coming off multi-week injury is almost never a good idea, though. That's where I appreciate your research, Dario, and I'm on board, right? I'm on board. And the beauty is, the projected ownership from Chris Gimino on RotoGrinders, pretty low on Jamar Chase. Yeah. Given the game environment, you would have thought top 15. He's at 7.5%. It's a great spot for him, man. I mean, this is pretty great. I think you're gonna have to be over the field on. That's such a weird. I can't believe I'm saying it.
I think what is so fascinating to me about Chase totally fits into this is that I have this sorted by projected ownership on. This is all flex plays in this game, so obviously no quarterbacks. T, interestingly enough, is the one catching the ownership right now. Yeah. I think his projection is a little bit inflated. Like he projects for more points right now, but I think that's part of like what Matt was talking about with you bake in a little bit of that injury risk with Chase. So that brings down his, and if you take down Chase's projection, right, you either have to give it to someone else or you got to pull down Burrow and you got to pull down all the Bengals and everything. Well, right. We're not going to do that. So it kind of goes to T. So T projects for a little bit more points, which is driving some more ownership. If you get Jamar Chase it would be one thing if he was coming back, maybe he was underpriced and it was like, oh God, everybody's going to play him. But that's not that's not what we're expecting to happen here. And you just have the tight end that can blow away the field, both of the quarterbacks that could blow away the field. And to me, mostly just Jamar Chase that can blow away the field at wide receiver. But then you also have those punt wide receivers on the Chiefs side, or Pacheco, who's also cheap at running back. It just like fits together so well.
It fits really well.
Everything that you want in like the stack, you know what I mean? We talk about this. We've talked about this with like Lamar stacks, maybe more so when they had Bateman, right? Dolphins and all that kind of stuff. It was always just like, well, all you need is the tight end, in this game, the best tight end in the NFL to do his thing, and then the second best wide receiver in the NFL to do his thing, and it's 2 superstar quarterbacks. It's like it just blends together so well.
It does. Dario, you take your Chase stacks, your Higgins stacks, You could play Kelley on the run back with Pacheco. Like you said, it fits together so well. There are inexpensive running back options available to make these lineups work. Zonovan Knight. I'm still skeptical about Travis Etienne. So you have Jermichael Hasty potentially. So there's Sky Moore at 3. There's plenty of salary savings out there this week to make these lineups work. Just chef's kiss.
Can Dario, can you walk me through? We got schoolfortechnicalanalysis.com in the chat, which is an impressive YouTube name, but is in on T, is diving back in on T. If you had to kind of break down what you want to do kind of amongst those Bengals skill guys to kind of wrap this game up, how are you deciphering? How are you prioritizing Chase T? Is there any Boyd, any Hurst in non-Kelley lineups, Mixon, or is it just a little bit more Chase for you?
I think that I'll probably want to be like ahead of the field on Chase, a little bit like kind of pretty close to even in exposure to them, maybe a slight edge to Higgins, but kind of be below the field on Higgins, ahead of the field on Chase, which you can still end up with more Higgins. Higgins has been absolutely balling this year. Like, I'm not opposed to buying on him right now. And then I think that Tyler Boyd, interestingly, has kind of been a bit of a no-show the last couple of weeks in this Bengals offense, but I think that a lot of that has been because defenses haven't had to worry about Jamar Chase. So there's definitely some room for him to kind of come back onto the scene in a big way, or at least like see more than 4 targets like he saw last week. In Chase's absence,
doesn't this just feel so Boyd?
I was just gonna say,
doesn't it?
I mean,
really isn't it really?
Yeah. It just feels like
it's almost like from miles and like from space you can see it.
Mm-hmm. I was literally gonna say that same thing. I'm like, I'm like, thank you, Dario, for the much better analysis that I'm giving. But it just feels like Tyler Boyd. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have any.
I've never had that feeling. Like, the whole back of my neck, all the hairs, man.
It's like a whisper in the wind.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Dario was whispering in the wind. Yeah.
Don't forget about Boyd. Get him in there. That's why we have these optimizers, man. That's why we have the lineup genius.
One
because
thing
it just auto generates these lineups when you're putting Burrow on top or you're putting Mahomes on top. It's gonna and you dial up the correlation. It's gonna give you tons of Boyd lineups. You don't have to worry about it. It's stuff that the human mind, where our biases are, we wouldn't have done it. Recency bias and vividness bias and all these things that would push you away from a Tyler Boyd. The algorithm will push him into lineups and give you plenty in your portfolio. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I mean, he projects for, this is not like some awesome projection, but if you see in your upper right-hand portion of your screen on DraftKings at 5,300, which has got to be the cheapest he's been in a long time, for 10 points. So then when you pull him into your game stacks, he projects fine, and that's when you kind of get a little, boost. The correlation and all that stuff gives you a little bit of a boost, and the next thing you know, you're actually not giving up that much, like from a projection or upside or anything like that. And I think he's the way. Like, if I want to double stack Burrow, right? I'm just envisioning Burrow, Chase, or Higgins, whichever you prefer, with Boyd, the punt, say Sky Moore, and Kelley. You have a $5,300 wide receiver, a affordable enough quarterback, and a punt wide receiver. That's how you fit all these guys, right? Then you got your Zonovan.
You technically can fit Burrow with Chase and Higgins and Kelley if you punt flex a running back and a wide receiver. You could, if you punt 3 positions, you
just
can
punt the rest of your lineup entirely.
Yes,
exactly.
Sky Moore is an essential element of that particular configuration.
But I just like, again, how it comes together is like, and I think Tyler Boyd is a little bit of a piece of that. I also think I have not looked into this for last week, but if I recall 2 weeks ago, it was so everybody thought it'd be the real Mike Thomas stepping in for Chase, and it was Trenton Irwin. And he was playing more in the slot, and they moved Tyler Boyd out wide, which I do not think is good for him and his fantasy viability. He's not really that kind of guy that wins on the outside like that.
He's not big enough or fast enough.
Yeah, but in the middle and against this Chiefs defense, I think is a good spot. Yeah, exactly.
The perfect setup, man.
I really like it. So anyway,
sadly, it's the perfect setup. But 2 touchdowns from a guy that's, low 5s on DraftKings. Giddy up, baby.
Any last things, Dario? And on that note, we didn't talk about Joe Mixon. That was basically the one guy we didn't talk about. After being out here a game and a half or whatever it was, are we doing anything with him, or just sticking to the pass game?
Matt, would you like to talk about the 12-hour by 12-hour injury analysis?
Oh my God, they did it again. They did it. So Eric, we decoded on the Mind of Mansion podcast. We've decoded what all these injury designations from coaches mean. That day to day means week to week, and week to week means month to month. And then they threw us a curveball with Josh Allen, hour to hour, right? Hour to hour actually does mean day to day.
Okay.
But now every 12 hours, I've decoded every 12. He's 12 hours to 12 hours. That's every other day to every other day. That's what that means. So now he's every other day to every other day. I don't love that. The nice thing is, though, if he's out, then Pirine becomes an affordable option, even though Pirine is technically, as we talked about, more expensive than Pacheco. But you'd love playing Pirine in that spot. If Mixon is active, having been questionable, but it's just a concussion, though. The concussion is not a lower body.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's active coming off a concussion, you've got to just mix him in. That's another. He's very similar to Boyd in that way, in that you learned your lesson, Eric. You can't leave him out just because you don't get excited. Our human psychological biases. We tend to dismiss Joe Mixon 7.1K, but it is a home game, right? And he does have 3 touchdown potential. He has 5 touchdown potential, apparently. So
I'll never.
We got to mix him into some lineups, right?
Yeah.
You got to do it. You got to do it. Can't leave him out.
You got to. I think that we pretty much sum that one up, but I think we've talked about the Chiefs a lot, obviously, as pretty much any game stacking show is ever going to do. What's fun about this game is that, if you're multi-entering, even if it's 3 entry max or something like that, there's so many ways to build very quality, high upside lineups. We just talked through how many skill position players on both sides and both quarterbacks and contingency plans, right? McKinnon, no McKinnon, Mixon, no Mixon. All of that allows you to build, some chalkier lineups with maybe some unique pieces from other games, or getting kind of off the board in this game.
These guys aren't that chalky, though. That's the thing. They're not as chalky as they should be. No one's as chalky as they should be, except for Higgins on this whole set from this game. That's why our methodology is that you focus on particular games and you game stack. And if and when these things shoot out and they blast past 70 total points scored, these lineups are cashing in a big, big way. And it wasn't even that hard to see it, right? So yeah, we double the field on Jace, double the field on Pacheco, double the field on a lot of these guys, and skew your whole portfolio toward this game. And everyone's going to be slapping their forehead on Sunday afternoon.
The opposite of kind of that game from what you were talking about with and the ownership side of things, but I get it, is Jags and Lions. And this was, I like how you mentioned earlier, Matt, that the Chiefs Bengals is 2 juggernaut offenses, crazy high upside offenses. But the reason, there's a little bit of pricing, of course, in DFS, but the defenses are respectable, right? They're not great, but they're respectable. Both of these defenses stink. And everybody's been playing guys against these 2 defenses, particularly the Lions for 5 years, but both of these defenses all year. And it's fairly condensed, particularly on the Detroit side, at least in the passing game. But that it stuck with me when you said that. It's and then you pile on that ownership fact that you were saying, and it's of course I like this game. I see all the reason why people like this game, but everyone is playing the guys from this game, and it's not necessarily because the offenses are so awesome that we expect a complete or another shootout. It's just the defenses stink. And so I like these guys, but I thought that was really well said, that it's like all the ownership is going to the game where it's just because the defenses are bad, as opposed to going to the game where it's like one of the best quarterbacks of all time and one of the best young quarterbacks and one of the best young wide receivers and the best tight end of all time, right? Instead of going to that game, we're going to like Zay Jones, who I like Zay Jones. Fine.
I never saw myself as like a common sense football guy, but that's my role on the show. I've never had that role. I love it. It's a great role to have. And I've had really good success this year in this role. And yeah, this is a trap game. This is a classic trap game where you're playing it for all the reasons that are secondary reasons. When you're stacking secondary reasons up and then you're getting to projections that are really friendly, it's a little bit dangerous. Where the other game, Chiefs Bengals, is so fundamental, right? It's so fundamentally juicy. This is very tricky. When I looked up and I saw how chalky Amon-Ra St. Brown was, that he was going to be the highest owned wide receiver on both platforms, over 7K in salary on both platforms, I had a little pause. I was like, okay, I see what's happening. Like, that was all I needed to see this afternoon. I looked at it, I was like, okay, I see how things are playing out. We probably can't be as aggressive on this game, whereas we normally would be. And, we haven't played any Trevor Lawrence at all. Have we talked about Trevor Lawrence at all on the show ever?
I don't know.
We don't play Trevor Lawrence. He's been a trap all year. Trevor Lawrence has been a giant trap. But now, yes, you're playing some Trevor Lawrence this week. This is the week. I mean, everything is dictating you play some Trevor Lawrence this week. But I bet you there's some people that are going to go crazy playing Trevor Lawrence. And I'm not saying go crazy.
Oh, he's the highest projected owned quarterback by a good clip, actually.
He finally gave you the week, right? He finally gave you the week last week against Baltimore, right? You've been waiting for how long for that week, right? Well, okay. Green light to start playing him a little bit. This was the Kyle Pitts rule with him. Remember? let him prove it, and then you can start playing him. He proved it. Now we can start playing him. But I'm not saying play him more than the field. I say maybe if we're doubling the field on some of these Bengals and Chiefs, I say maybe half the field on some of these Lions and Jaguars, just as, back of the napkin rule of thumb.
Mm-hmm.
What is your kind of overarching thoughts about this game, Dario? And on piggybacking on the Lawrence thing, it's always fascinating to me, these situations where Lawrence is projected to be our highest owned quarterback, and Travis Etienne is also going to be a very highly owned running back. And it's people don't really do that if he plays, of course, but people don't really do that thing, right? They don't really do Lawrence plus Etienne. And so do they steal ownership from each other? Let's assume Etienne plays. We can cover the other scenario at the end. Let's assume Etienne plays. How do you view both of them? And then just kind of, again, your overarching thoughts on this game.
I do think that, Trevor Lawrence kind of proved himself last week. He put together like a pretty good game-winning drive, made a lot of great throws. I think a lot of people who have been strongly in the Trevor Lawrence camp pointed to that game and said he's finally arrived, which, I mean, taking a year and a half for the number one overall pick is not ideal, but put that aside. He's like, this is obviously the matchup you want to play him in, but I do think if he's incredibly chalky, Christian Kirk and Zay Jones are both incredibly chalky. Like, there's if you're stacking Lawrence, the way too obvious way to play this game is double stack him with Kirk and Jones and then bring it back with Amon-Ra. And then if you're not playing Lawrence in your lineups, like every optimizer on earth is going to have Travis Etienne in it because his salary has just plummeted, even though he's, still going to be a stud. But we also do think that there are some concerns with Etienne's workload this week. So I don't know. Yeah, I think this is, I'm with Matt here. This game is kind of screaming trap to me, like the Star Wars meme guy.
I mean, there should be a skull rating next to some of these games, man. Honestly, like skull and crossbones.
Yeah, I think the hard part for me with this game actually is probably ETN, because if using Matt's kind of injury rule from before, if he was healthy and he'd been humming along like he was doing, and he was 6,400 against the Lions, no health concerns, I would be like, okay, I like to be contrarian. I'm not fading that. But now we do have this uncertainty, right? You tell me what to project him for workload wise, because I don't have any idea. It could be a DeAndre Swift situation, or he could be back to 80, 90%. I have
way
no
too
idea.
scary, man, for him to be this chalky. It's way too scary. He hurt his foot. He was out for the year with a foot injury last year. They have nothing to play for. What are we talking about? JaMychal Hasty just had 5 catches. Travis Etienne's never had more than 3. What are we talking about, man? This is the opposite of the Joe Mixon bias, right? Where Joe Mixon just feels boring. Travis Etienne feels exciting. He feels like he has a lot of upside. And you see a couple 20-point games there in a row. Hey, yeah. Not based on what he's doing in the passing game, based on touchdowns. Right? Man. Yeah. And then it's like, but it's the Lions. Yeah, but okay. The Lions aren't giving up that many fantasy points to opposing running backs. I was a little bit shocked about where they ranked among defenses versus running backs. So it's just man. It's just I know there's not a lot of metrics behind this except like maybe wait for a guy to be super active in the passing game before you get this excited in a full PPR format.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, that his game this season has been built on his rushing efficiency, right? We saw in like the London game against the Broncos, he was just breaking off 10-yard runs every time he got the ball. Same thing against the Raiders, right? So if that's what's built his like fantasy standing to this point, and it was the touchdowns too that helped get him there, and if any of that is even compromised by the foot injury, it's a pretty concerning profile very quickly.
They're not going to give him 20 touches. What? If they do, that's negligence, right? I mean, what? I mean, I just can't. I'm like, what? You want to cross him off your list? Fine. Do not play him. Fine. Like it because the way to play this game is with Lawrence stacks anyway. It's not like you're stacking Goff, right? And whenever we play a quarterback, we always go straight to the target share of the running back to determine whether or not that running back deserves to be stacked with that quarterback or whether there's negative correlation. There's negative correlation between ETN and Trevor Lawrence. Does anyone know? Has this been talked about yet? You say you listen to all these podcasts, Eric. What the hell's happening?
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I brought it up. And those are the kinds of situations. It's funny because those are the kinds of situations where I end up, and we're all definitely on the same page with this. It ends up being like, look, if this game blows up, like I didn't do this remember the Seattle and Detroit game earlier this year. I didn't like full fade it. I think I ended up playing mostly Rashad Penny in that game, which like worked, but everybody on the Seahawks worked. They scored like 50 points. But it feels like, of course, I'm not projecting this to be a low-scoring game, but like, it doesn't mean there has to be someone I need in tournaments in this game. Like, it could be 28-24.
2 touchdowns to Jamal Agnew.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be...
Marvin Jones catches a touchdown. JaMychal Hasty has a touchdown, right? Jamal Williams does his thing. Jamal Williams scores 2 one-yard touchdowns, but is it relevant?
Yes, Jamal Williams. You got to play some Jamal Williams on run backs. Absolutely.
I don't even know if he has the upside. And I mean, I guess the 3 touchdown thing again, but it's like, he's just living off of the 1-yard touchdowns. He's not catching passes. It's just tough.
He's making a living on DeAndre Swift and Amon-Ra St. Brown getting tackled inside the 5.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, shout out to Jamal Williams. He's awesome. I like Jamal Williams. It's been great for the old best ball teams, but like, it just feels like I don't know how to go about this game, because even like we like to do our little secondary stacks, right? Amon-Ra is always such a good one for that. Like Jamal, if Swift is out or whatever, even then it's like, I don't know. I did think this was like not because of the revenge, but a technical analysis. Our guy was if you really do want to do something in this game, you want to stack Lawrence. I do like doing it with like Marvin or Evan Ingram as opposed to the super chop, right? If you play Lawrence to Kirk and Zay with Amon-Ra, it's like, how many teams are you duping with that stack? So I like being a little bit different with it. DJ Chark is back to basically a full-time player. It hasn't popped yet in the box score.
There
so
you
I like.
go.
I
Now
do
we're
like these guys.
talking.
I do like these guys.
Now we're talking. That's a play I can get behind. Yeah, you don't even need to do a big double stack on this. I wouldn't even get so much exposure to this. You just want to play Lawrence with Kirk and run it back with Chark? Fine. Like, just
didn't Goff
turn
miss
down the
Chark?
exposure on this game a little bit.
So they play the Bills.
Game stacking, like I said, this is not a game stack. This doesn't feel like a game stack to me. This feels like sure, we want to play some Lawrence this week. He's proven himself. He's in a great spot. You don't want to there's no reason to fully fade him, right? So don't. You do some creative, cool stuff. Fine. Move on.
Yeah, so I was trying to look. DJ Chark got up to 73% of snaps last week, which was basically a full-time player. Amon-Ra played 87. 5 targets, which was so, but second in air yards. And I was trying to remember, so they played the Bills, pretty good defense. I thought that Chark was wide open for a touchdown, that Goff missed him on like a 50-yard touchdown.
That is true. That happened.
I believe so. I couldn't remember. It was a little early and it was Thanksgiving, but I was pretty sure that happened. And so I think we talked about all the guys we don't really like as much as the field here, but I think DJ Chark would be the guy that, like, if I'm going to flag plant somebody in this game for tournaments, I think it would be him.
There you go. Yeah. And Christian Kirk is getting the air yards. Right. Yeah. Christian Kirk is getting the target share. Christian Kirk is the clear number one there. I mean, he's technically not a true number one, but he's not that expensive. It's an amazing smash spot. Like, I understand why he's so chalky, but he's not as chalky as Amon-Ra St. Brown. So, play some Kirk. Sure.
Yeah. It's kind of the same as Matt said, Dario said, as we've said about a lot of, like, there's no reason, like you said, to full fade this game across all your lineups or whatever. But I think we made it fairly clear about our feelings about Chiefs Bengals, and then kind of comparing the two when you use ownership, when you factor in ownership and everything. It's just maybe find your way to some DJ Chark, right? Some of these other guys, and mix and match through your Amon-Ra's and Kirks and Zays and Lawrence stacks or whatever. But don't go crazy overboard. A game I'm pretty interested in hearing you guys' take on, that is much more close to rivaling the Chiefs game for me, is Chargers and Raiders.
Thank you.
And that is, again, very similarly to what we talked about with, like, why are we playing these guys? It's not just because of, it's the Lions defense, right? I never want to say I'm playing this guy and start with that Lions defense matchup. I want to start with something about that player or that offense. And both of these offenses have that. Not necessarily Derek Carr. He's fine. But Devontae Adams, that dude, pretty good. Foster Moreau finally came through last week. Dario, shout out to us for finally chasing the
We told people to stick through it for one more week, and he delivered.
Finally delivered. Big touchdown. Devontae didn't go, totally crazy, but I don't think that matters here. He can do that in this spot. And the Chargers are going to be, I believe, again, right, without Mike Williams. And so you have Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, DeAndre Carter popped last week. A lot of fun pieces
in my absence.
In this game. Yes. It was fun. Had Moreau and DeAndre Carter on the afternoon slate, and nearly shipped everything until the Josh Jacobs overtime touchdown buried me. But it was a very fun brand moment of Foster Moreau coming through and DeAndre Carter coming through for some money. But anyway, Matt, kick this one off, because I think this one is kind of like it's definitely not Chiefs Bengals, but it feels a little bit more fun for tournaments for me than maybe our
so much better of a game to play than the last game we just talked about. I love it. What a gift this week. And we talk
the ownership.
We don't talk about enough is, you don't want to invest the same amount in GPPs week in, week out, right? There's some weeks when you want to, turn up the dial a little bit. When are those weeks? Weeks like this, weeks when we can identify with ease the games to play. So, okay, you're dialing it up to say, you're at least your average spend. Okay, good. Then you see the field going after, like, the skull and crossbones game, right? So if the field is now putting money down on the skull and crossbones square, now you turn up the dial even more, right? This is a week to really invest, because who are you investing in? Oh, I don't know. Burrow, Mahomes, and Herbert, right? Yeah, this isn't a Pickett week, right? Come on, man, do it. Like, you feel good about it. You're stacking Herbert, Devontae Adams on the run back. Who doesn't want that, man? That's what we're talking about. Josh Palmer, right? His ownership is how much lower than Zay Jones this week?
Oh, dude, Zay Jones is like 10 times the ownership of Josh Palmer.
Yeah, and these are similar players. These are similar players. Their salaries aren't that much far apart. And what's the big difference? What is there? There isn't a big difference, but yet there's just perception. And Zay Jones coming off the big game, his one big game in the season, right? Lawrence had a big game, his one big, winning DFS game of the season. Zay Jones with his only big game of the season. And again, I can't figure out it. Every week I sit down and I'm like, oh, wow, cool. I'm surprised. I didn't realize everyone would be on this very smart, savvy play. Then I sit down some weeks and I'm like, I can't believe people are falling for that play. That's crazy. And this is one of those weeks. So it's, hey, but normally it's like, I'm impressed. This week I'm a little bit like head scratching. Cool. Right. Let's play some Palmer, man. Let's play some extra Herbert. Now isn't this the week to play Herbert, to get in your Herbert? What am I missing? Didn't we have this circled like 2 months ago?
Yeah, I think the Raiders matchup has become at least as good, if not better, than the Lions matchup from a opposing offense perspective. So we have this situation where the Lions are just like everybody's been playing guys successfully against and it's still a good matchup, of course, but playing guys against the Lions for years, it has just been like, oh, that running back 6,200 against the Lions, he's gonna smash. Got to play him, right? Trevor Lawrence is cheap. Got to play the cheap quarterback against the Lions. People have just been doing this for so long. The Raiders, I'm just using DVOA as a quick and easy example, have the worst pass defense in the NFL by DVOA. The Lions are actually like 25th or something like that. Not great, obviously, but better, 10% better than the Raiders. And so I just feel like we're overlooking the fact that this is look, Lawrence, maybe he's getting better. He's not Justin Herbert. Travis Etienne is not Austin Eckler. Christian Kirk is fine. He's not Keenan Allen. Zay and Palmer, maybe Palmer's a little bit better. Right? At what spot is a Jaguar better than a Charger? And the Chargers have just as good of a matchup. So sign me up for this game. But Dario, you get to do the same thing. Talk me through the Chargers. I feel okay about the Raiders side of things. We'll definitely talk about Josh Jacobs, but on the passing game, it's like, man, in the pass game, Devontae and Moreau is always so nice because, them and a sprinkle of Matt Collins, you don't really have to think too hard about that. But what about the Chargers?
Well, I think, first of all, I wanted to point out that Matt, this, like you said, these teams played each other in week one, and Matt couldn't help but notice that the Chargers defense choked out the Raiders offense, and we didn't get a shootout game like we hoped to. But that's
times have changed, baby.
Probably not going to be the case.
Times have changed. Times have changed. That didn't even occur to me now.
Hanged up. So the one concern that we had about this exact matchup between these two teams has diminished since the last time. All the upside is still there. So I think just for all the reasons that you guys have already outlined, we just have to keep in mind that outcome of the Chargers defense slowing down the Raiders to a halt is far less likely than it was in week one and what we witnessed the first time they played each other.
And even then, Devontae Adams had 17 targets and 33 fantasy points. Even when that scenario, I remember that. I'm so glad you brought that up because, people had been targeting the Chargers as well all of last year, and people were coming in like, oh, I'm going to go do that again. But we outlined hold up, this Chargers defense just added a whole lot of talent. But over the course of the last 3 months, naturally, because it's the Chargers, everybody got hurt. So they stink again. But that's not coming in through the ownership, right? Devontae Adams is 9%. I know he's 1,500 more, give or take, than Amon-Ra, but 9% Devontae Adams against the Chargers and 30% Amon-Ra. That doesn't make any sense to me.
No, man. It was a couple weeks ago. My final thought was don't forget about Justin Jefferson. My final thought this week is don't forget about Davante Adams. Like, whether you're stacking this game or not, Davante Adams should be heavily played. Heavily.
And we talked about this.
I mean, you're saving all this money, right? Because what are you doing? Oh, you're playing your Lawrence Kirk, right? In this other game, right? With Lawrence Kirk Chark, right?
Yep.
Make sure Adams is in those lineups too.
And you can build like fairly like there are unique ways that you can build Chiefs Bengals that you can still get Davante in there, right? Like 100%. If you do Burrow with Boyd and Hurst or something like that, you don't even have to go this cheap, right? But you can play pieces that we really like in that game and still spend a good chunk of money on Davante or Eckler. I mean, God,
the Davante Eckler skinny stack, that is super. If you want to play Lawrence, fine. Play that Eckler Davante Adams skinny stack and get some actual firepower.
Yeah. Eckler had 15 targets last week, and it wasn't the most targets he's had in a game this season. That's unreal.
Yeah. Absolutely unreal. 15. I mean, and they won.
Eckler's
correct?
cheap at 8.5K.
Yeah, they came back and won that game. That was a crazy game.
Yeah, it was a very good game. One thing I do think we have to touch on, because we're all very excited about Davante, and I think rightfully so. A low-key, even better thing about Davante, if people are playing Raiders, they're just playing Josh Jacobs. Look at what Josh Jacobs has done this year. Look at what he did last week. But I think, he seems to be fine. But dude, if there's ever a week, again, using Matt's kind of injury type stuff, if there's a week for them to scale him back a little bit, I know that they need to win, blah, 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 blah. McDaniels is probably playing for the locker room, whatever, all the stories that have come out about kind of how big of an asshole he is and stuff this year, probably not going over great. But if Josh Jacobs has a calf strain, he heard it last week. They weren't even sure if he was going to play.
Mm-hmm. Then 33 attempts they gave him.
Yeah. Then he puts the team on his back, and now he's like kind of barely practicing this week or whatever. And I know it's the Chargers. It's a great matchup. I mean, James Conner did well against this, and James Conner lost his juice 3 years ago. But like, I do feel like Jacobs is a little bit of a trappy proposition as well, kind of similar to the ETN and that whole game. And so it's like, man, I can just
Josh Jacobs was averaging 15 fantasy points per game the last 4 games, the month before the Seahawks game. Okay, which was his exact career average. It's what he averages every year. It's just this one game. We're going to change everything we think about this guy.
It's really funny. Like if you do look at this box score, and then I do want to hand over the Jacobs and continued assessment in this game to you, Dario. But like, isn't it so funny? So we had the 50-point game, right? And then we had that stretch where he was kind of unstoppable there. The rest of the season is like, of course, these 20-point games are nice, but I mean, it's nothing like that of a $9,500 running back on FanDuel. Mm-hmm. He's priced like Christian McCaffrey used to be, you know, and he's not that. And so, do I expect a bad game? Of course not. Do I want to play him, especially alongside some other chalky pieces in tournaments and spend all my money here? I don't know, probably not. But what are you kind of what are you thinking, Dario?
I think it's a tragedy that we haven't mentioned Mac Hollins yet.
Okay,
he's automatic.
Now we're talking,
because he's just such like his involvement has been locked in. He's had good games already, and Renfro and Darren Waller are still nowhere to be found. Yep. Like, Mac Hollins is as good of a play this week as any other, and yet his projected ownership is like 4%.
Oh, love it.
And he's still 4,600 on DraftKings and 5,900 on FanDuel.
Mac Hollins and Josh Palmer. I'm like, guys, have you been just if you watch? This is the thing. I can't believe I'm this guy. How did this happen? You watch these games and you're like, wow, Mac Hollins and Josh Palmer look explosive. Mm-hmm. They look like playmakers, and they're being fed, and they're scoring touchdowns. They're making big plays. Like, no, Josh Palmer doesn't have the most exciting workout metrics or efficiency metrics, but He's making big plays week in, week out. Mac Hollins making big plays week in, week out. He actually does have a little bit more of an exciting size-adjusted athletic profile than Josh Palmer does.
He was a
Mac
monster
Hollins
at
is
North Carolina.
locked into a clear number 2 role in one of the most, prolific passing games and one of the highest scoring offenses that we've seen the last month of the season. This is a dream scenario for a 4.6K wide receiver this week with Mac Hollins. I mean, this guy's automatic.
I love it. I love it. I love bringing up these wide receivers. We get into this all the time on the show. It's probably my favorite part of the show. But it's like everybody, when you look at projections or whatever, ownership and such, it's like, well, Zay Jones and Christian Kirk and Amon-Ra. And we're like, no, Mac Hollins, right? Josh Palmer. This is when we do the Khalif Raymond and the Josh DJ Chark.
Is it like
right?
his haircut that he has like a weird, puffy haircut? You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand it. Like, what is the bias? Like, why? Like, why do people love Travis Etienne and they're dismissing Mac? Like, I don't understand the psychological biases. I don't understand them all the time. It just, this is one of those weeks where there's a lot going on where I'm like, why don't you people like player X and why are you in love with player Z? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and even more so, I would add, it's not even just like, why do you like Travis Etienne or why do you like Christian Kirk or whatever? We keep going back to that game. It's just the easy example, right? I don't have really a negative thing to say about Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's great. He's going to get a lot of targets, whatever. But it's not that those guys are necessarily bad. It is that we just named like 20 dudes across 3 games that are like pretty close, maybe better, right? Mac Hollins, Josh Palmer, they're maybe better than Zay Jones as plays, DFS plays, but the ownership is like minuscule compared to it. So it's like, what are we going to do in tournaments? Play 3% Mac Hollins or play 25% Zay Jones? Like, well, obviously I'm going to play. They're like the same thing. It's like the
Chark is 3.8K. I mean, come on. This is like I said, this is why you can so easily skinny stack Eckler and Adams. This is why you can actually play Mahomes, Kelsey pretty easily because you have these punt play wide receivers where you could between Sky Moore, Chark, Hollins, Carter. It's like, yeah, these are the right players in the right games at the right salaries. We wish we had these options most weeks.
Yeah, that is for sure.
So this is a week to stay out of the middle.
I like that. I really like that. Yes, 100%. Yeah. So a lot of weeks, Nico Collins is getting 15% ownership because it's just like, we don't have anybody else, there's no 4K. Now we just talked through again with 10 guys that you can play. And of course you play them in these game stacks and skinny stacks and all that kind of stuff, but there's a lot of options and there's a lot of low owned options. To put a bow on this one, Dario.
Well, actually, Dario, can you pull up the optimizer, the lineup genius for this game? Just put in create a Herbert lineup real quick. Can you do that?
Yeah, I unfortunately my Chrome is acting up, but let me just I'll run through it real quick on the side here.
Okay, that works.
So let's talk about Dolphins Niners. We should talk about that game because there's going to be some points scored in that game too.
I want to pass it to you right on back to you, hot potato it back to you, Matt, because this game is fascinating to me. It's the McDaniel. I'm very excited to see McDaniel outduel Shanahan on Sunday. But the Dolphins have some offensive line concerns that I'm very worried about with multiple injuries. I haven't seen anything on Teron Armstead updated. The last I saw was like it wasn't looking great, but that was yesterday. Yeah, that was yesterday. But so you have offensive line issues, which this is not the defense you want to be having offensive line issues against in the Niners. I just, without Eli Mitchell, maybe it makes McCaffrey, Debo, et cetera, a little bit better. I'm just kind of struggling with how to build and like how to attack this game. You know what I mean? All these other games that we talked about, like I feel really good. This one, I'm like, well, I don't want to play Jimmy really. So then I got to play Tua, but the matchup's not awesome for Tua. You know what I mean? How are you kind of approaching this one?
Fading.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, we have Debo not practicing with a quad injury. it's like the playmakers you really want to play have issues. One has offensive line issues. One has health issues. It's like, okay, who are we playing here? This is a skinny stacking game. This is a Hill Kittle, right? This is a Waddle Ayuk. This is I feel like if we're going to be overweight on Burrow, we're going to be overweight on Mahomes, we're going to be overweight on Herbert stacks. It may be one of those weeks where we just our portfolio has no more than 4 quarterback stacks.
Yeah,
because we don't need to get that creative with the quarterback salary this week because we're salary saving on so many of these Charks and Sky Moores. So you actually can consolidate your quarterbacks, and then you end up introducing a few more skinny stacks from these other games that we like. This is an interesting game. It's got, the game total's 46.5, which is just a weird game total that tells me that Vegas doesn't know what the hell's going to happen here. I worry that it's at San Francisco, that with offensive line issues against this 49ers front seven, Tua, the nice thing about Tua is he's been getting the ball out fast anyway.
Yeah.
He gets the ball out super fast anyway. So that should help him. That should negate some of the offensive line issues. But, when I think about the Waddle Ayuk seems cool, right? That seems cool. I can see Jeff Wilson having a day, right? That seems like a very plausible outcome. That's sort of a revenge game. But
there's all kinds of revenge going on.
There's
in
a
this
lot
game.
of revenging happening in this game.
Yeah.
I hate playing guys that are have expensive salary. Well, Debo 6.6K on DraftKings, not that expensive.
Yeah,
just this quad injury is bothersome. Got to play some Debo if he's active though, because he's still relatively inexpensive at that price point for him. And he has big play potential, and it is, Miami's, a good matchup for him because I'm guessing Xavier Howard will spend more time on Brandon Ayuk. So that's good. At no point am I like, this is a game stack situation.
Yeah.
Oh,
anything from you, Dario? Because I don't have a lot, I guess. Without Eli Mitchell, does Christian McCaffrey make it into maybe a couple of teams, or are we just going back to the, Ecklers and those guys? It's just tough. I mean, I like
if
all
Christian
these
McCaffrey
players.
Didn't have an injury of his own to worry about, then yes, I would agree with that.
See, this is what we're talking about.
This ambiguous knee irritation is pretty concerning to me. It's funny because if I'm Jeff Wilson, like he's probably, why would you guys trade me away? Elijah Mitchell got hurt again. Like if there's ever a revenge game narrative, it's this one. And then I think, so that's like,
Ayuk is going to match up with Xavier Howard. I looked at Player Profiler, Cody Carpentier's cornerback wide receiver matchups. He's projecting Ayuk to be matched up with Xavier Howard at an above average rate during the game. Everywhere you look, there's like a little mousetrap is like on the guy's toe. It's the problem.
Dario, do we want to discuss this any further? Do we want to go through you ran some Herbert stacks through the optimizer, right? I think that's more fun to talk about than this.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Well, last year, one thing I'll say, last year before Teron Armstead arrived, right? What was Tua doing? 3-step drop, get it out quick to Waddle.
Yep.
So that's what he was doing last year with no Armstead, with no pass protection. So like if you're going to play some players, I think I'd much rather play Dolphins from this game, play Waddle, play some Jeff Wilson, and dabble a little bit with with a little Debo and a little Ayuk and a little Kittle, maybe Waddle Kittle, right? I mean that's maybe the preferred skinny stack, and that's about it.
Yeah, I'm being totally honest. It's only Friday. We got 2 days, but I don't know that I'll have anybody from this game. We just talked glowingly for an hour basically about 2 games, and even the third game that were like kind of trappish, right? Matt's skull and crossbones game. even then, it's like we found DJ Chark seems nice. There are ways to play that game.
Right.
This one is just like, gosh, I mean, you don't have to play, even though these guys are exciting. It's like, look at all the other guys that are exciting too. So I'm kind of leaning away from this one and into our Chargers games that I'm quite excited to see what the optimizer's coming up with, because we always land on some of the right games, and it leads me to the plays that, like Joe Mixon, thanks for bringing it up again, Matt, that I have bias against, and I'm like, okay, maybe I will play that guy this week.
Yeah, so I started with just like locking in Pacheco alongside Herbert. So Pacheco and Adams were like the lonks, and then came out with Justin Herbert, Isaiah Pacheco, Zonovan Knight. He's going to get a workload. He's 4,600. Michael Carter was ruled out today, so that's a good sign for him. And then our receivers are Devontae Adams, Juju, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Carter in the flex, and TJ Hawkinson. So
look at
Hawkinson.
There's so much correlation on that team. It's getting
that Zonovan Knight, TJ Hawkinson skinny stack. I'm loving that.
That's nice. I like that one.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite skinny stacks of the season. Love Hawkinson, love Zonovan Knight. Bam!
Literally, bam. Yeah.
Like Harrison Bryant's gonna make a lot of
Eric's
lineups.
Like literally. I'm like, I know literally.
Yeah, literally. But I'm just laughing because that is this show. If you clipped something from every single one of these shows, it's getting excited about Khalif Raymond or Bam Knight. People, the overwhelming majority of the world did not know who Zonovan Knight was. They certainly didn't know that his nickname was Bam before last week. And now Matt's favorite skinny stack of the season is Zonovan Knight and TJ Hawkinson, who wasn't even on this team.
Tell me I'm off base here.
No, it's just hilarious that like other people would be like, I think my favorite skinny stack is, Amon-Ra and whatever, Stephon Diggs last week. His is Bam Knight and TJ Hawkinson, who's on a new team this year.
That was wow, that was magic to my ear. Can you show that on the screen, Dario?
I have to exit the.
Oh, or you're
no, we don't want to lose him.
I got it. Well, we'll I'm imagining it in my the lineup genius in my head on
this way. People
Profiler.
can't screenshot and dupe us.
Give us one more. Give us one more.
All right, plug this in there, Eric. It's Justin Herbert with Pacheco and Dalvin Cook as the running backs.
Justin Herbert with, let me go to all here. Pacheco. Let's sort by salary.
I love that you pinned Pacheco. That was good.
Pacheco, and who was the other running back?
Dalvin Cook made it in here.
Oh,
so
Dalvin,
happy.
That's interesting.
I'm telling you, the lineup genius likes this. This is the last game to talk about.
And then
Vikings Jets.
Devontae Adams, Josh Palmer, Keenan Allen, base all three of our receivers around this game.
Nice.
And then Harrison Bryant is the tight end. And then the optimizer just loves Nico Collins, but at the same price point,
got ruled out, by the way.
Oh, in that case, probably then go ahead and plug in Nico Collins.
Why. Yeah.
Nico all the way, baby. Yeah, that's it. I got a date night I got to run to, guys. Look, I have a question, because I do think that the fifth game that you could consider game stacking is Vikings Jets. Mm-hmm. I'd be more likely to stack Vikings Jets than I would Dolphins Niners. And I think that Vikings Jets should be almost on par with Lions Jaguars, because what it lacks in terms of just raw points upside, you get back in lesser ownership. Mm-hmm. Right?
I agree. Yep.
Which is nice, right? I think that we're going to see all the ownership of the running back switch, because there's going to be a bunch of shifting over to making lineups with Zonovan Knight. He's going to be a big lineup maker this weekend, so that's going to be cool to see. And then, I don't know, Justin Jefferson, he's a pretty cool play.
He's good.
There's going to be this could be a big Dalvin Cook week. Typically, when Dalvin Cook plays a team like the Jets, he has a day, 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, very much in play for Dalvin Cook. Then you have a guy breaking out all over the place, looking like the most exciting rookie in Garrett Wilson. So we've got all these plays. the thing is, it's very difficult for me to swallow Kirk Cousins in a tournament setting. Things have to go, everything has to run so pure with a double stack for Cousins. So it has to be Jefferson and Hawkinson both getting there with Cousins and the right run back. It's a tricky thing. Like, I think you could do that for sure. But my big question for both of you guys is Mike White.
That's what I was going to say. You don't want to play Kirk. I would rather play Mike White.
So
and Kirk.
There's a green light there.
I think especially with the price. Yeah, I was going to say, I think Mike White, like, is he a better play than Trevor Lawrence this week if you factor in ownership?
Oh, stop it!
Yes. I'm so
you
happy
guys, I'm in love. You guys, this is now my favorite show of the season. You guys are really making my day.
But why, like, seriously, why isn't he? Lawrence, we waited a year and a half, as Dario said, to get that game. And he scored the same amount of fantasy points that Mike White did.
Private White. Look at him. He looks like he's booked a report for basic training.
Also, I'm being totally biased, hand in the dirt, watching the games, football, bro.
That's what I'm talking about.
He looked awesome.
That's
White
what I'm talking about.
Awesome.
Guts. We're talking about grit. Right? I mean, he is the opposite of Zach Wilson in every way. Right?
I mean,
I'm Mike White, dude. You're Mike White.
But you mentioned
he looks like
the ball
he just
out.
looks like an NPC in Madden. It's just like like any generic
saying.
The guy you draft in the 6th round on your, the 18th year of your franchise mode, you know what I mean, this is Mike White. But I do think, he's obviously not some star quarterback, but what they do have is a shit ton of offensive talent. I know Michael Carter's out now, but I'm not sure that it matters. Even low key, like the Tyler Conklin, CJ Uzoma tight end pairing.
Tyler Conklin revenge game. I was hoping I would get a chance to mention it today. Tyler
Yes!
Conklin revenge game. The Vikings let him go in free agency. You don't think that's been on his mind all season and he's had this game circled?
God, what is happening this week? But I mean, I kind of like Tyler Conklin. Like, if you want to double stack Mike White with Garrett Wilson and Tyler Conklin, get you a little Justin Jefferson on the bring back. Why is that not as good of a stack as some of these other ones? I do think, anyway, being serious for 2 seconds, just the difference, like that Matt said, from Zach Wilson to Mike White, just the guy who he just gets the ball out and he's not trying to win the game with his arm like Zach Wilson does on every single throw. He's just like, dude, I have Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore, and now Corey Davis is back and Tyler Conklin and decent running backs, right? I'm just going to throw it to them. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just going to get the ball into the hands of Garrett Wilson and let good things happen. He's getting it out quick. I don't know. I actually kind of think he's reasonable, but even more so, like Garrett Wilson and the Jets skill guys are very much in play with him at quarterback.
And Zonovan Knight can catch.
Yeah.
Yep.
Zonovan Knight, 5 targets last week?
Yeah, Zonovan Knight, you can play him.
That's Travis Etienne's season high.
He's been better
right
in the
there.
passing game all year than Travis Etienne. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. So he actually less negative correlation.
We took this show so far off the rails in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, we're just like, we're criticizing all the highest owned players on the slate. All the grinders are like, you guys are out of your mind. We're mocking Travis Etienne, who's the chalk of the chalk. Or like Zonovan Knight actually is better in the passing game and has less negative correlation with Mike White. I can play White. I can play Zonovan Knight with Garrett Wilson. And then
if you stack
pick
Jets,
your run back,
like you can take all the Kelsey, Jamar Chase, and Devontae Adams you can imagine. Like that's the other thing. You're saving salary, you're saving ownership.
I'm looking at a lineup right now with Mike White, and I see Eckler. I see Devontae Adams. I see Travis Kelce. Yes, the answer is so a resounding yes. You play your 3 elite quarterbacks this year, the ones you want to play, right? Like the AFC West, right? The Mahomes, the Herbert, your Burrow, and then you go all the way down to Mike White, and then that's it. That's it. You call it a day, man. You can play Jefferson. You can play Hawkinson. This is so great.
Great is a word that other people would probably not use to describe some of this, but I agree that it is great. I mentioned at the top that
this game actually has less points implied than Dolphins 49ers, which doesn't make sense to me. Right.
There's just
the Jets defense is kind of good.
Jets defense. Yeah. I think I think the actual only concern I have in this game from a game stacking perspective
Cousins
is
goes full Cowboys game.
Yeah, against the Jets. Yeah. Because that's a good defense. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Same.
But
I think that's
like
what's keeping the total down.
No, but I think that's why this being in Minnesota is a big deal. If this were in New York, I would agree with you. It would be very scary.
Yeah, it's in the dome.
This is in Minnesota, guys. This is happening.
Is there a funnier game to feel really good about game stacking than the old Kirk Cousins Mike White duel, in week 13? But we knew
it could be. Dude, this could be epic. I'm taking the over on this game.
Oh God,
that's my bet of the week.
Yeah, 1 p.m. Kirk is very different than primetime Kirk. But we started the show talking about we're into like a second wave of chaos, and I think we met our quota for all the second wave of the season chaos with everything we discussed here. What we do have to do before we get out of here is flag plant something. Conviction. What is we've gone through some fun ones today. Sometimes we dabble in the chalkier games. We went a little bit off the beaten path, but Matt, what is your kind of takeaway from what we discussed today that's your number one priority in tournaments?
Clearest eyed advice is the final takeaway thought of the season. This is the show of the year. This is the takeaway final thought of the year. Stay out of the middle.
Okay.
Stay out of the middle this week. Go with your elite plays. Go with your Devontae Adams. Skinny stack it with Austin Eckler. Salary save with your Sky Moores and your Charks, and ship it.
Dario?
I was gonna say Devontae Adams as well. I think that Chargers Raiders game, and then like Adams, Mac Hollins, completely like you should. However much Zay Jones you trick yourself into play way more Mac Hollins, please.
I really like that. It is definitely for me. I'm gonna again piggyback like I like to do on both of you guys. It is in that cheap wide receiver range. I want to do exactly what Matt said. I want as much Kelsey as I can get. I want as much Devontae. I want to bring up Jamar Chase again. I want Jamar Chase on my teams, right? Austin Eckler. I want those guys. I want Justin Jefferson. So how do I get them? It's these cheap guys, but I want to do it smartly in these games that we discussed, right? DeAndre Carter on my in my Chargers Raiders game stacks, right? DJ Chark if I did trick myself into playing Zay Jones, or so if I need a punt tight end and I go to Evan Ingram instead, now let's use DJ Chark as my salary filler at the wide receiver position. There's so many of those guys. Nico Collins, we talked about. You want to play Nick Chubb as a technical analysis is calling the Chubb 203 game, which I don't even think is really that crazy. You want to spend up for Nick Chubb. Again, there's your stars and scrubs thing. Mm-hmm. Go get Nick Chubb. Use Nico Collins on the other side. There's all these cheap wide receivers that are like legit good plays. This isn't dumpster diving for Braxton Berrios, on the Jets when everybody else is out. This is dumpster diving for really actual guys that can put up 25 plus fantasy points. So stars and scrubs, go get your Mac Hollins and DJ Charks and DeAndre Carters of the world, and ship it with the superstars and one long Mac Hollins touchdown. That's going to do it for us this week. Matt's got a date night. I do too. It's my wife's birthday. So we're going to go have some fun this evening and probably eat too much food.
Let's go have some sex and GPPs.
Yeah. Good thing she doesn't listen to the shows. For myself and for Matt and Dario, and of course Steve, back on the ones and twos. We will see you guys in week 14 off of hopefully a big rousing success in our quote unquote show of the year, as Matt said.